Good evening and salutations, my G. This whole Kai thing with Trina and him they're telling Drew what Curtis was planning on doing to Drew and betraying Trina's confidence is not as is a lot more complicated, right? Because the truth of the matter is he doesn't know the whole story. Right? He doesn't know why Curtis wanted to set him up in the first place. He doesn't know about the whole blackmailing thing. He doesn't. He doesn't know about why Portia did what she did. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. You know, Portia could sit there and say that she was not there protecting Trina. But protecting Trina from what? Heather never once sat there and said that she was going to go after Trina. Hell, she never actually did go after Trina. She went after Jocelyn, right? She was probably going to go after Cameron, but she never really seemed like she had that much issues with Trina. And here's the thing: she's not a fortune teller. Okay? People want to sit there and say, well, she protected her as a mother. Protected her from what? She didn't even know what she was actually going to do. So, Portia practically laid her, she practically made her bed. Because she's not, you know what I'm saying? She can't see the future. But whatever. The point is that Kai doesn't know the whole story. And all he knows is that Drew gave him this opportunity. And also, Drew didn't sit there and take the ketamine. He didn't sit there and sleep with Jacinda. So in his mind, he's like, listen, I did the wrong thing because I'm not going to let him be accused of something that he didn't actually do. Now, he does sit there and say, listen, if the truth comes out, I hope that we can agree to disagree. And I'm like, okay, see, now we're just talking delusional because in what universe do you honestly think that you betraying Trina's trust and then saying, well, I hope we just agree to disagree? I mean, is that just like wishful thinking? Because it's like you have to you can't be this naive or this stupid to sit there and think it will just be, well, I hope it all just works out. He does sit there and say that he is going to talk to her. I have a feeling like it's going to get interrupted, whatever. 1 minute, Felicia is they're telling Curtis that, listen, she's on her way back. I mean, she's she's going to be on a plane. She's getting ready to go and everything like that. It sounds all good and copacetic. But whatever Drew's plan was, the next minute, Felicia Smith had come back in the room and being like, yeah, she's gone. She took off. She's not doing a plane or anything like that. So now Curtis is like, Drew got to her. Cody comes over Christina's place, or over Alexis' place to talk to Christina. Basically, Smith is saying that he has some bad news, that he overplayed his hand when he started getting kissed her, right? But because Ava didn't sit there and kick him out, let him finish, hanging up the pictures and stuff like that. She's like, listen, this can still be saved. It's not totally dead in the water. But Cody was like, I was kind of hoping that it was because he's starting to feel guilty. And you know how these things usually go. It's like you don't fall for the mark, right? It it almost is kind of reminiscent of when Natalie first came to town with the dude that plays Superman or whatever. Um, he got to know Jess and realized there was much more to her than this so-called spoiled princess or whatever. When he went to with her to her daughter's gravesite. And that's the thing. She talked about Kiki and everything like that, and all the stuff that she's been through. And it's like, it's not, and like she's been through a lot. But, Christina pretty much is like, no, she didn't change. She's the same person. She's not that deep. And, she just has that opinion of her, and that's not going to change, right? She still blames her for the death of her daughter. She blames her for the death of Morgan. So they're always going to have bad blood, right? And she pretty much just more or less kind of convinces him, just to keep doing what he's doing. Um, and during this conversation, Molly comes in. See, Cody was like, maybe we should sit there and tell Molly, let Molly know, whatever. And, Christina's like, no, let's just sit there and keep this a secret. Molly comes in like, what secret are you talking about? They make up some BS about how, she makes up some BS about how he's a good guy and, he's sweet, he was always helping out and stuff like that. And Molly finds out that Cody is also going to Ava's gallery opening for this Joe Santoro guy, whatever. And he leaves. And, Christina makes a mark. I mean, she makes her remarks into this saying, like, because there's a point where Molly's like, what's wrong with you? You usually always get an opportunity to sit there and badmouth Ava. Why aren't you doing this now? We got to sit there and get Cody away from Ava because she's bad news and everything. And Christina's like, is that why? Or is it because, you have a thing for that? Now, Molly's pretty much in denial mode, but she doesn't sit there and say that she does. One thing that she doesn't sit there and say is that she doesn't have a thing for him. She doesn't sit there and say that. All she says is, we don't have anything in common. But she didn't sit there and say that you're not into him. Trina and Ava pretty much is just kind of catching up. Trina's not there talking about her parents. I think only Curtis is not there going, and they're not really talking to each other. And it's just a lot of tension and bad blood or whatever. And then at some point, Rick shows up, right? Okay, so Rick asked Liz out, to see Liz or whatever. And Liz's like, oh, I can't really do that because I got plans to go to the art gallery. And, by the way, before I forget this, Lucas said something that was really interesting. Lucas, at some point, when Lucas went to go talk to Liz again, he was like, wait, so he asked you out as like some sort of a date or whatever to go to Ava's gallery, even though he's seeing Ava. That's hella messy. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually very true. But anyway, he's like, maybe, I'm going there too. Maybe we should sit there and go together as a date or whatever. At this point, Liz is like, okay, so, like, yeah, she pretty much just makes it clear that she just wants to sit there and be friends with him. And, Rick is like, he's all apologetic, and he's like, listen, we can be friends. I don't want to sit there and disrespect, like, whatever boundaries you have against me. And he apologized and everything like that, and, just kind of make sure that they're good. And then what he does is he goes and gets flowers for Ava and also money from Alexis, because Alexis just keeps giving this man money to kind of make up for, their little argument yesterday. And she just, she accepts or whatever. But I don't know. Part of me just kind of looks at it and I'm just like, is it really that serious for you, Ava? Because, like, if this is just, like, fun or whatever, then, like, you really shouldn't have a problem with if he wants to sit there and see Liz or not. Like, is this more than just fun or is it just fun? Because, like, I have a feeling, moving forward is that Ava's going to get jealous. And that's when Cody's going to sit there and take advantage of her as far as, seducing her while she's vulnerable. Carly and Willow. So Carly pretty much just rings Willow out for what she did at the whole pool thing and just, ambushing Michael with Wiley and stuff. And, At this point, Willow, I don't know if she is just like she's in denial mode. Um, and she's a little kind of manipulative because she's like, listen, can you blame me? I'm missing my son and everything. Like she's trying to appeal to her from mother to mother. And at this point, Carly's like, listen, we don't have a problem with you seeing the kids. We don't want you marrying Drew because we don't want the kids. We don't want Drew in the kid's life. That's what the problem is. But Willow kind of sees that as a sense of control. It's like, no, you're not going to tell me what to do and who to see or anything like that. And at this point, Carly's like, okay, fine. Listen, if you want to sit there and make a mess of your life, that's fine. But I can sit there and ban you from, the hotel. Which I think that she should do because, it happened once and it shouldn't even have happened. Women should think it's not going to happen again. Like Wiley and Michael should be able to go to the pool and do their thing without Willow just constantly, not abiding by the court order. Which, she does sit there and tell Drew that later on. And, Drew's like, listen, we got to sit there and tread lightly. Because we can't sit there and make any sort of moves or whatever. The custody hearing or visitation is going to be coming up soon. And she keeps it, and he keeps it there saying, we're going to get married and, we're going to be in a stronger position. And eventually you're going to get your kids back. And I'm going to be honest, like that strategy, I'm surprised that worked the first time with Michael and Willow to, um, win custody against Nell. You know, I'm surprised that it worked the first time. And it almost, in some ways, kind of seemed like it didn't, but I don't. The problem is Willow hasn't really been thinking for herself, and Drew is just concerned with what's good for him, not necessarily if they get the kids back. So I don't understand how he actually thinks that it's going to work. That this strategy is going to work. And Martin, let's just be honest, Martin just wants a paycheck, and he is desperate to get it to a point where it's detrimental to Willow because, like, bro, I'm not even a lawyer, and I can sit there and tell you right off beat, I don't see how that's gonna work. And he probably knows that too, but at this point, he's like, hey, listen, he's paying me a lot of money. I will sit there and say whatever gets my check signed. I guess he doesn't mind sitting there taking a couple of L's for his reputation as far as winning and losing, just as long as he gets some money. Now, Jordan comes over to talk to Curtis. Alicia leaves. And long story short, she's just like, you know what? I think after, because what she says is, when Curtis comes in, I mean, when Jordan comes in, Curtis is like, listen, I want to apologize for what happened before. And Jordan's like, listen, I may not have liked how she did it as far as like the message that she sent, but she wasn't wrong. She kind of realized that she's been kind of out of pocket about the way that she's been moving. It's like, listen, um, unless it's family or work, we shouldn't be sitting there spending time because I don't want to cause, more damage in your marriage. And Curtis is like, listen, I hate this, but you're right. I haven't been fair to you, and I haven't been fair to Portia either. And I'm like, this is the first time in a long time that you've actually been sitting there making sense. And it's amazing that you didn't have the strength to sit there, the fortitude, the strength to sit there and see that before. And if Jordan didn't say anything, you would have still been moving the way you've been moving. Like, it's. Huh. Jason and Sonny are pretty much just kind of talking shop or whatever about, like, what they're going to do with the whole Sitwell thing and Natalia and Turner and everything. And, one of the things that, Sonny says is that, yeah, he's, gives Turner props for not they're trying to railroad him, but also she feels kind of guilty. His interpretation is that, between Turner and Sonny, they made it this terrible situation where it's like Natalia felt like she didn't have a way out, and it led to her death. And Turner feels kind of guilty about that. And Sonny, and Jason's like, do you feel guilty about it? Sonny doesn't feel guilty about it. There's one point he does sit there and say, like, to Jason, like, she got kind of delusional up until a point where she felt like me and her had some sort of romantic relationship, and I was going to be going down there with her. And, again, it just makes me sit there and think, like, did you. I mean, I don't like to believe that people have these conversations off screen, but it just makes me wonder, did he say something to her to make her think that, he was going to go down there with her to make it more easier for her to go? But he does sit there and say, like, actually, I can't remember what he said. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking about the conversation that before with Turner. Like, listen, she had a lot more problems, a lot more demons. You know, you don't know what somebody's going through that people do that, they do what they do. And basically, Snit is saying that this is not us. This is whatever she was Snit they're going through. But he does sit there and say that, he thinks it's Sitwell, and Sitwell came after one of his children. And he's like, listen, I need to sit there and send him a message. You come after one of my children, I'm coming after yours. Jason already got like a plan in place. And while that's going on, Lucas talks to Carly. Because, Carly's not there going off and Willow about, what she did, and she's not going to get away with it. And Lucas like, let me just borrow you for a minute. And he asked Carly to sit there and talk to Sonny about, not going after Marco. Marco did save Christina's life because, well, Christina's a dumbass. And, he doesn't really have anything to do with the business or anything like that. And, Carly's like, listen, I'll see what I can do, but I don't have the influence that you or anybody else thinks I do. But she does go over Sonny's house and she begins the conversation. Like, you need to sit there and talk. Because ultimately, Lucas is like, it's not just a favor for him, but if you go after Marco, and Marco didn't do anything, that's going to be bad for everyone. That's going to be, what I'm saying, like that type of war that Sonny's going to sit there and start is going to affect a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be casualties because of that. It's like, now the last thing I want to sit there and talk about is Michael and Sasha. Sasha has not, you know, I'm assuming that she probably stayed up all night or whatever, just holding the baby or whatever. And, Michael's like, listen, I can take over if you want. You can get yourself some sleep and stuff like that. But she's like, no, because I still believe somebody has been messing with our baby and doing stuff or whatever. And, Michael was like, there's a point she's like, so you think I'm crazy or whatever. And Michael was like, no, I trust your instincts and stuff like that. I can tell the difference. I've seen you at low points. Um, Now at this point, Sasha's like, I gotta leave this house, because somebody can get in and out, and all the security is not going to really matter. And I just sit there and say, I was like, you probably should sit there and take that child. And a lot of people said, take that child, get the F up out of there. Michael's like, okay, you can go to Carly's, you can go to Felicia's or whatever. And Sasha's like, nope, I'm leaving Port Charles, you know. And at that point, Michael's like, no, I can't let you do that. Now, here's the thing. This was always the plan for Sasha. Sasha did sit there and say, Michael, I don't want you involved in the child. I'm going to be moving and I'm going to be away and stuff like that. And, you're not going to really have any contacts. That was always the plan. And I think Michael secretly was hoping that enough time and, enough closeness proximity that she would change her mind. But in reality, I don't think that he really had any intentions on just not being a part of that child's life and, just letting her go God knows where. Or, this is just another possibility, he might have said that at first. But, you know, when that baby was born, everything became real. Everything became real. And while he might have had the best of intentions on letting her do that, once that baby was out into the world, he was like, yeah, I can't do that. So, but he's also not on the birth certificate either. So that's a problem. And I don't know if I said this though, but Cody does actually go back to the gallery. Um, he apologized to Ava for any sort of miscommunication, whatever. And Ava's like, listen, it's water on the bridge or whatever. Everything is fine. So, he still go with this whole plan thing. But I have a feeling like the more he gets to know Ava and spend time with her, he's going to be less likely to screw her over. But I guess we'll see. With that being said, I'm going to go. I can't think of anything else I want to happening. But if I forget anything, write in the comment section. I will sit there and try to do a live stream tonight. Most likely around 8:30, give or take. If not sooner, but I will post it in the community tab. And I'll see you in the next video.